right, so we're back.
Welcome back.
Yeah, this is going to be part deux.
Part deux.
Wonder if that will ever get old.
Well, technically, this is the second time we've done that.
Maybe even the third.
Is it the third?
I think the third. I think this will be our third two-parter. But anyway, for those of you who just tuned in, this is the second part of our episode with Jacob. We're going to be cutting right back into the audio. So it's going to sound a little disjointed, but, we're going to make it work.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not too disjointed. Anyway.
Yeah, so get yourself some chocolate cake. Maybe some hot chocolate.
Whatever you like.
Some bad coffee.
Like what we're about to enjoy.
Yeah, what you got to do is make the coffee and then let it sit on the burner for about 6 hours. That's how that works.
So enjoy that.
Enjoy that, and we'll get right back to the episode with Jacob. Thank you so much for listening to 2teachone.
Yeah, so the language we use oftentimes, so there's common ground, but the language you use to describe our experiences is often too rigid to make room for obvious commonalities. Now, I'm reading off of your notes. I think there's a discussion to be had there.
Sure.
And I think it's more of a debate, right?
Yeah.
Than it is anything else. And so you were just saying something about that. So let us talk about that again.
Well, as we've mentioned a couple times at this point, I think, we're dealing with people. This is all about people. And I think recovery is about connection. I think, so addiction and all the issues that come with it, I think are about disconnection. Disconnection is often based on misunderstanding, which is based on language that we use, these quote unquote traditions.
Sure.
And the misunderstanding of those.
Yeah, so for instance, the tradition, right, of calling whatever it is, something like when people say higher power, right? Mm-hmm. And they say, like we talked about earlier, of your own conception or as we understand him, I guess in a way that could be viewed as you're still talking about a God, right? Mm-hmm. You're still talking about this sort of idea. And there's a lot of talk about that in the main text. Like we had to stop, pretending like we knew what our place was and this and that and like kind of give that sense of self over to this conception of a higher power or God, right? Which, like you said, can lead to a lot of misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. Especially if you don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
Well,
and there seems to be a lot of folks getting hung up on that language, right? Two people could be talking about almost the same exact thing.
Yes.
But don't want to come off of how they refer to it.
Right.
And so in that way, language becomes this barrier. When you're both talking about the same damn thing, I don't care what synonym you use.
Yeah.
I almost said cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Yum.
It's okay. Yummy. Yeah, we like cinnamon.
Yeah. on our pancakes.
Yeah.
With peanut butter.
And the language used in the big book and the 12 by 12, it was written a long time ago.
Sure.
And there are folks that take that language very literally.
Yes.
The same as they do in their own religious practices.
Yeah,
right?
that's so interesting.
Speaking of an old book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's talking about things that we can all identify with and understand. It's just what it's called and the inability to use other words that are more accessible or that are more accepted or that make people feel less alienated.
Yes.
I think that's where we want to move,
I couldn't agree more, especially let's just consider the society in the 30s, right? American society where that was written. I think the amount of people, no matter what they may have believed in their heart of hearts, the vast majority of people, the social aspect of church, right? The unifying, we all believe this one thing, we all go to this place and we say the same thing. It was very unifying.
Well, it was church before state. It was church before church.
Yes. That's the way it was. And nowadays, that's not how society is. Like, just regular church attendance isn't as high as it used to be. There's a lot more alternative belief systems, and it's accepted now, I think, in a way that it wasn't then. And finding a way through that in the 12 steps, because what people often don't know too is that, like you just mentioned, just like there are religious fundamentalists who believe that every single syllable and word is divinely inspired in whatever book they think God speaks through. The same thing occurs with the big book. Mm-hmm. And I've been a part of those groups, where, every word is parsed. Everything is adhered to by the strict letter of what they said. And I think in my opinion, at least, that wasn't the intention, right?
No.
The whole idea was, how do you get sober and how do you stay sober? Mm. Right?
Absolutely.
And this is what worked for them. And I find it intriguing that even before they list the steps out in the book, here's a suggested, right? Not this is what you have to do. Even the book itself says these are, suggested.
Yes.
So
yes, it does.
I find it fascinating that there are people that miss that.
Well, I'm going to add something to that.
Yeah.
The text that we were talking about a little bit earlier before we fired up the podcast here, mm-hmm. we were speaking of the 12 steps and 12 traditions in the section that talks specifically about step 2. Step 2 being the OG stumbling block for folks like myself. It does talk about that, so many people miss that. These are suggestions, so on and so forth. But then in the following paragraphs, the way that it's explained directly contradicts that these are suggestions.
Right.
And so for somebody like me who's just looking for something to grasp onto that I can make sense of,
right,
that certainly doesn't help.
Yeah, I do.
It's a definite double standard within paragraphs in this literature that we're supposed to put our heart and souls into. In my experience, I had handfuls of people tell me that if I didn't do this way, I would not get help.
Yeah.
And that is horrifying for a free thinker such as myself.
And they were wrong.
They were.
Which I think is also
and I laugh
true.
about it every day.
Yeah. Like what proves to me, right, that this book and series of books were in fact written by fallible people, mm-hmm. Is stuff like that. Like you can read it and hear the cognitive dissonance. In one sentence, they are, this is a suggestion, but you can also hear in the following paragraphs that they believe that if you stick around, you will eventually believe like they believe. Mm-hmm. And I think that was their thing was, well, if you just kind of hang loose and just hang around, you'll eventually come around to the way that we see things.
Yeah.
And I think they believed that. Sincerely.
But I don't want to see things the way you see things.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yes.
I want to get sober.
Right.
But I'd like to remain me.
Yes.
Right?
So do you believe that there's a component of indoctrination of sorts?
Well,
in the approach, like, cause yes, the messaging in some ways it presents as this thing that is very free form and, non-rigid and this, and all of these things, right? But as we just said a second ago, on the other hand, there's the other side, right?
Sure. On one hand, they're saying it's suggested. On the other hand, you can tell that they truly believe that the way that the original founders kind of went about things is the way that people will eventually believe. But again, even with just the inclusion from AA number 3 of, as we understand him, is a step, right? You can see like the step that it will eventually be at, where there are so many groups and there's so many people now that you can find, like you said, if you still have enough fight to just look for it, find a group of people who are living the sober life, who are generally adhering to those spiritual principles that do allow you to be sober without, the religious indoctrination, which is so hard to separate from the original text.
Yeah, at times it very much seems like vetting.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Truly, yeah,
like some sort of clandestine agenda.
Right.
I mean, speaking of the language, even the hymn part, and that's not even just a 12-step thing. That's just in the whole Abrahamic religious
tradition. Yeah,
we're going to go down a rabbit hole with that one. So I'm not going to continue.
But I get it. Yeah, and even just in the way that they spoke in the times, right? Yeah, like you said, the founding of it is still very much colored by the time and place and religious tradition in which it was founded. I think our discussion is covering like the main issue, I think, with AA as we understand it today, which is that it is that, and yet it is also open enough through the wisdom that they did find.
Sure, there's space for everybody. There's space for everybody.
And that's so cool.
But you got to fight for it.
You do. Oh yeah, because I have been.
Wish they'd have told me. I showed up with a toothbrush and. Man.
Yeah, and you don't, and it's so funny because I know you find people in AA. Like I remember some very scandalous things happening in my group from people that I thought were like spiritual giants, and then you just realize, oh well, this isn't like some kind of religious organization. This is just a group of people
we're dealing with people
who
who
were sick. Right, and trying to get well, and oftentimes their path to just staying sober doesn't include other aspects of what you might consider a spiritual person. You know, the way that they live their life outside of just being sober.
Sure.
And I think that's, like you said, we're dealing with people ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, so to play devil's advocate, right? So many things in society today. I mean, absolutely everything is, there's so much of, this religious aspect baked into it, right? So, especially back then, now we can look back with this, with this, coming from a place where we have all of these tools at our disposal that a lot of people didn't have back then. They used what they had.
Yeah.
Now we're armed with the Google box, man. I mean, I could just type in anything in here and it just has an answer.
You just goggle it,
or
man.
50,000 answers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, in all fairness, in some ways, let's agree that they did pretty well with what they had, because so many people have been able to, including yourself, so you've been able to, muddle through it, man. Just kind of trudge on and, really find something that has absolutely transformed, your life.
There should be an added step at the beginning saying, I agree to disagree,
Yeah.
That would change
in
things.
not so many words that to tie this back to sort of how I work with folks in the field on a professional level.
Right.
One of our beginning points, one of our foundation points in therapy is that, we're going to have to agree to disagree on some things. I promise to do that if you do as well.
Yeah.
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 No, I think that's great.
You don't have to agree with everyone, and not everyone's going to agree with you.
Yeah.
Nor should they.
Right.
Yeah. And I think too, there's room now in society for modification of behavior, right? So I can, like you said, I can change the way that I view the world and relate to the world and not have to change the way that I believe about the world. I'm not sure that in that time period they understood things that way. I think they understood that if you were going to change your behavior,
right,
you had to change the deep-seated way in which you viewed the world. And I don't think we see that the same way just through modern psychology. I mean, there are things like
just defining the way that someone else sees the world to begin with is a flawed idea. You don't get to define how someone else sees the world.
Sure. I think what you're saying is true. Like, they definitely had this view that if you adhered to this moral point of view, that your behavior would change in such a way that it would allow you to not drink. And I think everything else that AA is today has grown from that.
Sure.
And it includes a lot of things that they probably never even thought about. And
it's a complicated endeavor.
It certainly is.
I mean, there was, it started with 3 people. So.
Right.
3 for 3, man. 3 for 3.
Yeah. And they had some interesting experiences on their own, outside of what is commonly. It's funny because there is sort of this mythos that has built up around the founders that is not necessarily borne out by the evidence of their lives in the sense of this purity that a lot of people think that they just never again had any issues and troubles. That certainly wasn't the case.
No.
Yeah. So, so as you were saying that, I was just thinking to myself, I remember early on in recovery, I was just kind of hanging out thinking about, I think I was reading this text, right? There was this visual, and it was just kind of this whole idea surrounding the fact that there's these 2 people that are, seemingly flawed, right? 2 people who have an alcohol or a drug problem, whatever it is, right? And the only way they can get from point A to B. You know, if they're on their own, they're stumbling, they're doing all this, they're all over the place, right? But if they lean on each other, right, just right and balance, they can move slowly until they get to the decision. And I just loved that as an idea, you know, and I know that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with exactly what we're talking about right now, but I just loved.
But it does.
That yes, it does. Yes.
Well, I think it points to, if you can find a way around these obstacles, there are some really, really profound moments in the experience of 12-step. And now both of you know very well at this point that it hasn't been the only part of my journey, right? But it was the beginning for sure. Yeah. And I learned some of my hardest and most valuable lessons through that, not just as a, person trying to get sober, but just as a person, period.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I know you said something to me early on when after I had left the Rock and become a steward, and you said something to me about transcendence, about, the whole idea is not to stay in one place and with one thing and glom onto it and just keep repeating it over and over again, is to move forward, right? To transcend where you're at, to reach a new plateau of just how you view the world and how you relate to the world. And I think that that's interesting because I don't know that a lot of people, they stop with this and it becomes rigid, right? And AA or NA or CA can become a religion for them because that's it. Like, this is the answer and I have found it and I stop there. Whereas, like you said, it was the beginning of a journey and certainly a huge part of it, but not the end. There's other things you're exploring. Like, once you moved past that part of your life, you kept going. Right? And I think that that's where we talk about, there's, like when Adrian was talking about that example, it reminded me of one where, when you have the people in the room, like the religious leaders who are just kind of beginning, right? They're arguing with each other. I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. Whereas when you get the people who are truly sort of advanced in their understanding of the universe, they don't argue.
Sure.
Right?
They just ride around in like a bulletproof car and wave at the crowd.
And I don't necessarily even mean those people.
The incense ball and everything, yeah.
I don't necessarily even mean those people. I mean the people who truly get it. Like, they're like, I know you come in this tradition, but where they've come through and transcended to, they kind of understand it in a different way. Yeah.
And as a clinician, our stages of change in the therapeutic field dictates that, after the maintenance phase is the prelapse and then relapse phase, which means that if you stay in maintenance, you eventually start the cycle over again.
Exactly.
There's no room for transcendence in our current stages of change model that we use.
That's fascinating.
And one of the people that taught me brought that to my attention, and then I brought it to your attention.
Yeah, and it's such and I think that. Well, first of all, you hit two things I think squarely on the head that. If we were talking about the future of addiction treatment and where it kind of goes from where we're at now, number one, connection, which is, I think, huge.
Meaningful connection.
Meaningful connection.
Yes, deep and meaningful connection.
Was hugely important to me. And two, this, like you said, this idea of transcendence that, although I am this thing, I don't have to identify my entire life as being around this thing. Now, certainly it will be a part of me, but it does not define who I am. And if it does, then like you said, then you just set yourself up for continually being in this cycle, which I was in for years.
Yeah.
And until I sort of understood, it's a part of who I am. It is not who I am. Yeah. I don't have to redefine myself.
And that directly correlates back to the language that we use in regards. Here's a perfect example of what you were just saying is a lot of people get hung up on the definition of recovery. Oh, you're in recovery, this and that. If I were to tell some of these folks that I'm recovered, their brains would blow out the side of their head.
Yes.
You're never recovered, this and that and the other. And I politely disagree, sir.
Yeah.
You know, to say recovery indicates this thing that you're constantly chasing.
Yes.
You're constantly maintaining. Now, I'm not saying that I have any ideas that things will ever be like they were.
Sure.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that if you stay in maintenance, continually chasing recovery, like where does that go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's got to be an end to it,
Yes.
right? There's got to be an end to it. There is recovered. I'm here to tell you.
Yeah.
And again, that's that language,
Yes.
you know, but recovered is transcendence, right? Recovery is, I've still got some way to go,
Right.
I've still got a few things I need to achieve. And again, I'm not by any means indicating at all that there aren't things that I have to do. There
Yes.
aren't things that I have to keep in mind.
Sure.
That I could ever, use like a gentleman.
Right.
Like I'm not delusional. I get it, right?
Yeah.
But there is, you don't just plateau and then just, it's like going to the gym and doing, 3 sets of push-ups every day.
Yeah.
Eventually it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
It becomes pointless.
You got to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, more of the same is not what you need to do more of. Right.
It's gonna have to graduate to the bench.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the part that you've recovered from is the part where, it's become, well, you've recovered from this idea that you'll ever be able to use, or that can be a part of your life. But as a person, you're continuing your growth and, your whatever that looks like.
I've recovered from using a ridiculous means to an end.
Okay.
Yes.
I've recovered from the idea that I need something external
Yes.
to fix the things that I don't like internally.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Understood. Yeah.
I'm aware I can't use.
Yeah. And I think
I will burn this building down.
I believe you.
But here's the thing. Recovered means even if presented the opportunity, I have no need to.
Yes.
I have no desire to.
Right.
Because it wouldn't even address what I'm currently addressing in other ways. Right. There's just no need.
yeah, you've moved past.
It's an interesting debate that I often bring up with people that I work with. Like, if we were to, if the world's leading physicians were to, and scientists were to present us one day with this miracle cure, this pill that you could take that miraculously renders you not an addict ever again.
Right.
Meaning, should you choose,
You could use.
you could use. Would you?
It's an
And my
interesting
answer
thing.
is without even a shadow of a doubt, no, because I don't need to now.
Yeah. There's no.
It doesn't do the same thing
Yeah.
because I'm recovered.
Yeah. That is so true. I think that is the difference.
That's transcendence,
Yes.
right?
I totally agree. In your earlier statement, you pointed out, again, one of the issues, right? Which is it's a word.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that so many people could get hung up on the word, that what you just said I've been in meetings and in groups of people where we couldn't even get to the second part of what you said, which almost anyone would agree with because of just the verbiage
Right.
that you used that was so against the orthodoxy
Right.
that exists because in many ways, for those who haven't understood what transcendence is, it has become a religion.
Yeah.
Right. In the meaning that there's a dogma, you must adhere to this dogma if you were to achieve,
Yeah. And then you enforce those definitions on those around you.
Yes. Which I think is some of the downfall. Some of the things that could be improved upon. I don't want to say downfall. Maybe that's too strong a word.
Just in life,
Yeah, in general.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not throwing the 12-step community under the bus at all.
No, just in any group that treats words that way. Could be religious, could be AA, could be, where you work, right? If you can't say certain words because people get hung up on them, then you can't have a discussion about what those words really mean. And I think, that's the point. But going on to your idea of transcendence and being recovered, I couldn't agree more. And I think that is the direction that the industry or the field ought to move in, and is slowly.
We're dealing with better equipment nowadays.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and we're understanding things. And I always have to say this because for me, the understanding of the physiology of the brain. The fact that addiction, for me at least, was often a reflex in the fight or flight parts of my brain, the part that fights, the part that mates, the part that, tells me I'm hungry, all useful, had become not useful in its reaction to my anxiety and fear and anger and inability to deal with the world, right? It had fixed that problem in a way that was ridiculous, right? That did not work for the rest of the system.
Yep.
And why I couldn't think my way out of it was I was continually stuck in that fight or flight stage. And a lot of the new behavioral therapy that teaches you how to examine a thought, was just crucial in that. I just had to make that statement because I think it's important.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It definitely is. Now, in closing, we're just going to kind of bookend this discussion. What is it? So we're talking about a very specific, group of people. What is it that these folks, yourself, Jacob, and people that may have similar, challenges and beliefs, what are they to do? What are some of the things that they can do to aid them, through this
That's a good question.
potentially tumultuous, process?
This is going to sound possibly a little cold and maybe just a tinge of cynicism, but it's true. There are going to come some moments, or possibly a moment, where you just have to make a decision and you have to have some backbone. In my life, that decision was, do you want change or not? Because no one told me it was going to be easy.
Right.
No one promised me anything. I didn't have any delusions of it being easy. Therefore, I wasn't prepared to give up. Ironically enough, I clung to some of my old defiance in that regard. I defied them to try to chase me out. I defied them to try to alter my beliefs. I defied them to try to vet me, and I know that's probably not helpful from a clinical standpoint. I don't know any other way to put it. I just refused. And through that refusal, I found what I was looking for. It's a tried and true cliche in the 12-step community, but if you do the right thing, the right things begin to happen. And that's not somebody else's right thing. That's your right thing. Only you know what your right thing is.
Yeah.
And only you can decide what gets in the way of that. Right?
Yeah.
And when you're in such a broken down state, it's easy to cling to all the things in the way, right? Because it's a distraction of what's really going on
Sure.
that you probably don't want to deal with.
Right.
It's an easy way to vent your frustrations, is just shoot venom in the eyes of everyone around you.
Yeah.
It's useful at times, but,
Yeah.
we're not in a, I'm not fighting off dinosaurs or anything like that. It's you just got to take a stand.
Yeah.
Against the things that are important to you, against the things that are threatening to those things that are important to you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's even just defining what is important to you to begin with, right? Because I think we lose sight of that.
Yeah.
And in the long run, is arguing with some old timers about their definition of God important to me? It is not.
Bang.
I just came off of my need to enforce my definitions on others. And most importantly, I stopped putting value on their need to enforce theirs on me.
Right.
Right? I just simply didn't have it.
Yeah.
I just simply didn't have it.
Freedom.
Well
Yeah.
said. Well said. Now, coming from a clinical perspective, right? How do you work with clients who have a rigid belief system?
It's actually easy because it's their system.
Right.
They're the client.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm there to work with them. They're not there to work with me.
Right.
I meet them where they're at and we work from there. I don't have to agree with it.
Right.
I will throw my 2 cents in if it's not benefiting their treatment. Yeah, it's a disservice if I just allow them to continue to do reckless things that endanger what they came there for, right?
Right.
But their belief system in and of itself, what I think about that can't come into play. It just can't. I
Right.
mean, that's like basic therapy 101, right?
Sure.
Like I'm the therapist. They came to me. I don't get to just spit venom, and it doesn't matter in the long run what I think about their belief system. It does not.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't have to live with them.
Right. You're not in their head.
No.
Yeah.
No. I have to help them use whatever that belief system is as a benefit. Sure. Align their behavior with that belief system and go forth and destroy, right? Like,
Yeah.
Because it's almost always a matter of them not living in a way that's aligned with that belief system that brought them to me in the first place.
Right, exactly.
So we just align it. I don't have to agree with it to align it.
Right, so you're just guiding them to a place
because it doesn't have to work for me. It has to work for them.
Right. So you're just basically helping them arm themselves.
I go back to the Black Castle at night and do what I do. There's no connection there. It's their beliefs, not mine. For me, that part's easy. It really is. It wasn't in the beginning for the same reasons that recovery wasn't in the beginning. But, I'm in a position to help people and I would like to do so. And challenging people's beliefs is not helpful. Challenging their behavior around those beliefs is a different story. Is it aligned or not? It's pretty simple. When you feel bad, you're not behaving in a manner that aligns with your own core beliefs.
Right.
When you're feeling like hot shit, you're in perfect alignment.
Yeah, that is such a good way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, this isn't like quantum physics or anything, For those of you out there, I'm not a, quantum physicist or.
Well, I don't know.
No, next week we're going to have Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yo, that would be awesome.
I don't think he's an astrophysicist.
He's an astrophysicist. He talks a lot about.
He talks about quantum physics, but they haven't really reconciled the larger to the smaller. Anyway, it could be a good discussion, but probably for a different podcast.
Yeah.
But I love the way that you state that, because I don't know that that's a prevailing belief or understanding, and I think it ought to be. That generally I would say 99%, because how many people are walking around with belief systems that are truly just wrong, right? I mean, maybe a few, but those people usually end up in prison because they do something far outside the norm of what is considered acceptable.
That may be a mental health thing.
No, and that's what I mean.
Might not be a belief system
yes,
thing.
no, agreed, yeah. But yeah, so like you're saying, the key is to align your actions with your beliefs, and what happens a lot in addiction, and you end up not doing that. And then you end up feeling really bad about yourself. You end up feeling a lot of shame and a lot of stuff. And then,
baggage, man.
Baggage, right? And that's what's funny is if you can get past the first 3 steps, right? That's what number 4 and 5 is all about, right? And the rest of it is just, it's a non-clinical way to work with anybody to remove a lot of the baggage in your life, right? Anybody could sit down with somebody that they trust and go over all the bad stuff that they think that they've done and get an outsider's opinion on it, and then kind of let it go. Be like, I've done that. How much relief is that for anyone, regardless of addiction? And so the idea of bringing somebody back to their core values, and that it doesn't have anything to do with your core values, except that one of your core values is to help other people. Bam. Like that, I think that is the essence of what good addiction therapy ought to be. Because it includes things like we've talked about with, forming connections. Because it will allow, if you feel good about yourself, you can form connections with people. If you don't feel good about yourself, you can't. Such a good idea.
Yep.
So one thing we started doing recently is to ask our guests. You do a reasonable amount of reading, and so the question is: so when you were going through this journey, were there any books? Are there any texts outside of the one that we were talking about that you would suggest? That may assist people in going through this trying time, this interesting journey.
Yeah.
I read a book pretty early on. I don't know that I hold it in such high regard now, although not a low regard at all, but it just at the time really sort of validated my feelings of being different and feeling alienated. There's an artist, and I believe he's in recovery. a writer by the name of Bucky Sinister is his tag. I don't recall what his real name is, but he wrote a book sort of geared towards helping people navigate the 12 steps. And it is called something along the lines of the 12 steps for misfits, freaks, and something or other. I'm sorry, it's been a few years, and I don't recall the exact title. But I do recall that being pretty, just really validating at the time. That number one, I wasn't the only one having difficulties with this. Number two, that there are, ways to struggle through it and sort of be proud of that identity, right?
Sure, yeah.
I almost wear that as a badge of honor today that I had so much trouble and still did it, right? The grizzled veteran, so to speak. It did feel like I was waging war for sure.
Yeah.
I guess metaphorically it was probably much like a war. That's really the only one that comes to mind. I'm sort of weary about suggesting some of my reading material because it leans into things that would be really biased towards my own spiritual beliefs, which goes against everything we just talked about. I don't want to put my definitions on other folks.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's some out there. I just can't recall at the moment. I can, obviously 10 minutes after we shut this down, they'll all come flooding back, and I can give you a small list that you could pass on to folks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not a big deal. There's going to be some time we can add those to the description, the episode description.
Sure.
I've got a few that I'm making my way through now and recently, but titles and authors often elude me. I've got a few in my office.
Sure. Maybe we'll make a list later.
Yeah, we'll make a list after this, man. Well, so is there anything else we'd like to say in closing, or have we said it all?
To be honest, we could probably talk for a couple more hours about it a little more loosely.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we've said it all. But at the same time, I don't wish to further convolute the people,
Right.
The people demand resolve. So this is probably good.
Yeah, and it's such a lot because we've touched on, like you said, wars have been waged. And we're discussing an issue that is maybe
our borders were formed.
Yes.
By this,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe the largest issue in humankind's repertoire of issues.
Yeah.
Right?
So why wouldn't it be a problem in recovery?
Exactly. And I think just the ability to talk about it in a way that's understandable and yet doesn't get into some of the major difficulties that people have, and just pointing out how you can, because the whole point is to offer advice to those who are coming from an alternative viewpoint and yet still want to get recovery and still want to be involved in a program that, millions by now have found relief from their addiction through, or at least that program has been a huge part of that. How do they do that, right? And I think we've been able to sort of allow some pointers by, with Jacob's experience, both as a clinician and as a person in recovery, how they can make the beginnings of that journey, and most importantly, how to find their own way. Not follow in somebody's footsteps, but that there is a path that you can find individually. Mm-hmm. Just don't give up. Just keep looking for it,
Just know that, we're out here.
Yeah.
I'm out here. The Night's Watch. North of the wall. Winter is coming. Yeah. No. Seriously though, I mean, it is worth letting people know that folks like me are out here and we've done it. We made it, and it's probably going to get harder before it gets easier, but man, the other side is sweet. You can just sit on top of the wall and laugh.
Amen.
Really?
I felt it coming. I felt it coming. Yeah.
Oh,
which really just means so be it. It's just become a religious terminology.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, man, it's been a great time. I knew it was going to be. Like I said in the beginning, you're one of the most opinionated people that I know, and I know you've got some good stuff in there, man. Usually just try and stay mum and well, this was the opportunity, and I'm really glad that I asked you to come on and do this. Aaron, it's always amazing to have you as a co-host.
Right back at you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. As we mentioned, we're going to be doing some interesting things pretty soon. We've come into someone that we want to make part of our team.
Yeah.
So the podcasts are coming to YouTube, of the video version. So, look forward to that sometime soon. We want to thank absolutely everyone that supported us and that continues to listen. We definitely encourage everyone still to, share these podcasts. If you find something of value, more often than not, the truth is the topics that we pick because they impact us, as people and the people around us. And we talk about these things amongst ourselves. And we thought to ourselves, there's got to be more, let's have this discussion so others can hear,
Yeah.
And, form their own opinions or learn something new. And, we're really glad that we got to do this, and we would encourage you guys to definitely do the same. If you find something of value in these podcasts, share it with, your friends, family, whoever really, right? So usually you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher. I think we know.
All over the map.
Matter of fact, just Google us. It'll all come up.
That's right. And feel free to join in this conversation. If you have an opinion, you have an idea about the things that we talk about, we want to hear it. We want you to be part of our community.
Yeah.
That is the entire point.
I didn't
Yes.
form this system of beliefs by talking to myself. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So please rile me up.
Yeah. Join the
absolutely.
discussion. We'd really love to hear what everyone has to say.
Yeah, this has been fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you,
been
gentlemen.
really great.
All right.
All right. So thanks again. For now, we are going to end this episode. If you'd like to listen to any of our previous episodes, you can find us at www.2teachone.com. That's www, the number 2, TEACH, the number 1.com.
2teachone.
On Facebook and Instagram, you can find us at TWOTEACHONE. And on, let me see, YouTube, I believe you can also find us at the same handle.
That's right.
We will definitely be putting up some more content on there. However, if you want to listen to the podcast, via YouTube, feel free to do so. We're definitely on there. And I think
we're done.
that's it, man.
You want to say goodbye, Jacob?
Google us also.
Oh, yeah, please.
You can find everything you need to know about To Teach One on there. Jacob, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Very, very
Pleasure.
much.
Thanks for the coconut water.
Oh, yo, with espresso.
That's right.
We ain't half stepping around here, man.
We treat our guests with respect and love.
Well,
Most of the time.
I feel bad because we didn't get 2 coconut waters.
I know,
Although
but
maybe it's a good thing
Yeah.
because it does have espresso. in
I
it.
was just the perfect degree of riled. You didn't want to go. I'm telling you, you didn't want to push anymore. Just the right amount.
All right.
Fantastic. I'm glad you had a good time. We did too. So with that, my name's Adrian.
My name's Aaron.
Jacob.
All right. Thanks for listening. See you next time.